Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on navigating insurance in the new normal, where we will be getting expert perspectives on your asset insurances amidst COVID-19. Thank you for taking time out to be here today. So as COVID-19 becomes increasingly widespread, it not only raises fears about the well-being of the general public, but it is also very disrupting to business operations and creating numerous insurance exposures. COVID-19 has led to several business interruptions, supply chain issues, and significant liability concerns. As such, it is very important for companies to understand how COVID-19 can impact the insurance policies. We need to review our existing coverage and determine what precautions we need to take in order to control our losses. I am the Managing Director of Zamara Risk. My role revolves around giving strategic direction to a very dynamic team on creating innovative insurance solutions that meet the needs of the customer. Allow me to introduce my expert panel that is made up of some of the industry greats. We have Sandip Bhadury. Sandip holds a master's in business administration. He has a degree from University of Bradford in the UK. He's presently the CEO and Principal Officer of GA Insurance, which is the largest fire industrial insurer and generating the highest profit before tax in the Kenyan market. His work experience spans over 15 years, covering all facets of short-term insurance across India. He is also involved in the build-up of 3 startup insurance companies, including 2 in non-English speaking countries in Africa. The one thing that is very interesting about Sandy that most people do not seem to know is that he speaks Portuguese, Hindi, and Bengali. He's also an avid reader of non-fictional books, a movie buff. He likes trekking. Something that might interest the ladies is that he's very good at cooking, and he loves his music. The one thing that is also stands out when it comes to Sandeep is that he loves his coffee more than most. Welcome, Sandip. Thank you, Caroline. Sandip?
This COVID situation actually has been very unprecedented. So one of the issues what we faced is that Caroline and Walter had already mentioned is, our interaction with the clients. Now, what has happened is that now virtual meetings have become the norm of the day. So, and this is to be much more exhausting than the physical meetings, because you have got one meeting or the other lined up one another, because now you are saving on the commutation portion. So this is turning out to be much more exhausting. From an insurance technical point of view, there are certain lines of business since this is an unprecedented situation, we didn't incorporate, and I think as an industry we didn't incorporate the risk associated with COVID into our pricing. So that's so we'll wait to see in next 3 months, which we think it would be very crucial in terms of how the situation actually unfolds and how the industry behaves and how the industry corrects itself going forward, especially next 90 days is going to be very crucial.
All right, thank you, Sandip. So one of the most frequently asked questions that we have received does relate to liability concerns. A lot of clients would like to know how insurance would respond to guests, customers, and employees who allege that they became sick due to business negligence. Just to play on that particular point, what are some of the things that we can, some of the clauses or some of the ways we can assist our audience and our policy holders when it comes to proving that they actually did contract COVID because of a business negligence? So if you were looking at this situation from the side of a claim, how would you advise our audience? All right, Sandip, do you have anything to say about that?
Okay, just to add to what Walter said, actually, the absolute negligence has to be proven. Now, in terms of negligence, there are various kinds of negligence. Now, what contributes, how the business owner actually been negligent, it may be a little bit dicey to prove, because again, you have to understand this is a very unprecedented situation. And most of the policies which have been issued has the wordings have been very thinly worded in terms of communicable diseases. Now, in certain cases where I can give you examples where things become very apparent, I think you might be knowing, the thing which happened with cruise ships actually. So they were not forthcoming with that particular information, and and there have been incidences. So these actually, so infection or transmission in those kind of a enclosed environment actually makes perfect cases for this kind of claims. Otherwise, from an insurance point of view, what the problem with the insurance company faces is that whenever we face a claim, we have to defend it. And if we face a claim, we have to keep up our reserves till the case is closed. So that is where it has a direct impact on our profitability. And higher the reserves, lower the profit actually.
Okay. All right. I hear you, Sandip. So what we are saying is that the burden of proof is totally dependent on the policy holders, and there's an uphill task when it comes to that burden of proof. But should they be able to prove that there was actually negligence on the part of the business, then the claim is payable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is payable unless and until public liability, like the, presently, London Market Association, they have actually a LMA 53 series of clauses, which specifically excludes, communicable diseases, virus, spores, molds, even decontamination practices. So now, as you know, the insurance practice in Kenya, we are very much dependent on our reinsurance practice. So we are guided by that, and as a risk management measure, the new policies which we are issuing actually has an exclusion for communicable diseases.
All right, okay, that is well responded to. I'm going to give this final one to you, Sandeep, as we get into the pulse session. So working from home does mean that a lot of business premises have been left unattended and unoccupied for extended periods of time. What would happen if there was a break-in and I lose equipment or goods in the process?
Okay. Now, again, this is a situation where, what I can tell from my experience, most of the offices are not fully unoccupied. So there has been most of the businesses, they have been, especially I'm talking in terms of, a Kenyan context, because
Yeah.
most of the companies have implemented rota system. Now, the thing is that, when a business premise is unoccupied, it has security measures, which we assume it has, and that is one of the criteria during the underwriting of the policy, we look into it. So if it has full protected, as declared security measures, and if there is a break-in during that period, it is payable. Unless and until the risk goes on a silent basis. So when a risk goes on silent basis, there are certain conditions which kick in. So the risk has to be reassessed, and then actually the policy has to be recalibrated. But from my experience, what I have seen, including our office, we have been operating on rota system, our office, and most of the offices have, or premises, I would say, has not been fully unoccupied.
Sandeep, another area of cyber risk would affect a lot of organizations because of remote working. So some employees have contributed to loss of data and breach of data unintentionally. Would cyber risk policy cover such a risk?
Okay, that depends on the what is typically called an insider job in terms of data leaks. So there are some cyber policies which actually cover that. And if you take, especially when it comes to financial institutions, and in some BVP policies, they do have this, what is called an internal manipulation of data. So
Yeah.
that in some aspects, in some BBB policies, not all, depending on the price and the configuration of the policies what you have, it is covered. Now here actually in terms of I'll go back to your earlier question in terms of what as an individual, what is the primary risk you face. In case, there are two kinds of risks which happen, which we foresee is, suppose if you have a BOID policy in your office, and now your personal device is latched on to the company network, and that is is subject to a cyber attack. then one of the things which you as an individual can face is identity theft. You know,
Yeah.
so your identity, because
Mm.
when you have a cyber attack such that, but the company passwords, individual, because you see, you are logging into your device as an administrator. So anybody who is attacking your network actually gets into your administrative data. So identity theft, that has got very large implications. So in terms of manipulation of your individual records, you individually being subjected to ransomware, then targeted phishing emails. And then there is another point. When we generally talk about cyber security, we generally think about banks and others, typical institutions. But if you see the data globally available, 40% of the cyber attacks are on industrial institutions. In fact, as we speak, I think yesterday Honda's plant all over the world has been shut down due to a ransomware. So I think, you know, working from home, because I have seen, in terms especially on remote monitoring, people have been given access on their own devices, working from remote places, wherein they are actually logging on to the industrial network, monitoring and stuff. That actually, especially at industrial clients, this is a segment which we do not talk about. Like, how can a manufacturing, when we just think about a manufacturing or an SME organization, we generally think of some mechanical machines running. But that is not the case. There's a huge amount of automation over the period of time which has taken place. Especially if a company which is a multinational company has multiple plants running at multiple places, they generally have a central monitoring system, and that's where the attack take place. So this is something, through your, platform, I would like to convey to all the brokers and clients to have a much deeper look, especially if you have SME and manufacturing clients in your clientele. So that's
All right.
something. And another thing is that whenever you are actually enabling a remote monitoring, the organization must be very sure that they have virtual quarantining facilities. Suppose if a server is getting affected, so virtually can you quarantine that particular server, or very if these particular threat perceptions have not been taken care of, then I think you are very much exposed, that Walter had earlier mentioned.
All right. Thank you, Sandip, for that. All right. So the poll results from these last questions. A good number of people have home insurance policies in place. That is very good. And an equally good number of people are saying that they're not interested in getting one. And 7% do not have one. So working from home does come with its own risk exposures. And we have a lot of employees who have complained about the blurred working hours. A good number of organizations have had to come up with the guidelines of working from home. Some have gone as far as purchasing workstations for their staff to enable them work from home comfortably. So in this segment, because we have sort of run out of time, in 30 seconds, I will allow each of you to just let us know how the WIBA and the employees' liability policies would respond in these situations, because a lot of employees are employing the working from home protocols. No more than 30 seconds, please. And Sandip?
Already Walter and Caroline had added. I would like to, in fact, I was just checking some of the questions. I think there was a question on WIBA and COVID. I would like to tackle it from that angle. So if it is okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay, so basically, in terms of, as Carolina said, any kind of, thing which is originating within the scope of work is covered under a WIBA policy. However, our WIBA policy actually has one major exclusion, that is an occupation disease, which is defined what kind of occupation disease is excluded. Now, the other section which talks about other occupation disease is actually very ambiguous on what exactly it means. Now, when it comes to a COVID kind of a situation, it has to be specifically proved that the COVID transmission was particularly in result of the exposure in occupation to COVID. So the transmission was not incidental, but particular to the nature of his or her job. So in only that case, a VIVA policy would respond in terms of COVID. So now again, it in most of the cases it will go into arbitration, what we assume. So now again, there is this thing. Now there is another angle of employer's liability. Now here the situation becomes a little bit dicey because when you're working from home, duty of care, where does it come? Who is in control of the premises and under whose purview the duty of care comes in? So that thing becomes, as we said, it's a dicey situation, a little bit unprecedented situation. So these are some things I think will require some court decision to set precedents.
All right, thank you so much, Sandip. We only have a couple of minutes before the end of this session, so I will give you an opportunity to give your closing remarks in no more than 30 seconds, and then I will conclude. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline. Sandip?
First of all, thank you, Rosa, for the invitation and all the panelists and plus all the other joinees in this particular platform. This situation has forced us to think of insurance and navigating it in a very different way. In terms of, we need to think in terms of how we are going to use insurance as a tool of risk mitigation, because the kind of challenges that you face, this is a situation where we are specifically talking about cash flow crunch, as because of supply chain disruptions and the disruptions in manufacturing and other, demand side issues. So insurance becomes a very good source of risk transfer and providing you the cash when it is necessary. So if you are cutting down on insurance cost or reducing the cover, it would be detrimental. So to all the consumers here and all the brokers here, I would urge you that you advise the same for yourself, to your companies, as well as to your clients. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sandip. In conclusion, thank you very much, Walter, Caroline, and Sandip, for making time to be here today. Thank you to the attendees of this webinar for just taking time out for this. We really do appreciate it, Zamara. A couple of things that I would like to say is that we want to move from evidence to action, and how we will do this is that we would like to conduct what we would call a free consultation on your policies. So we will be able to identify any gaps on cover. We'll be able to pick out anything that would be seen as duplication of cover. And we'll also give you the tricks and the hacks of saving money. So please reach out to us. We will leave a number on the screen. I also do want to reiterate that in case you're unable to attend the entire session, or you want to go through this session again with your teams, or you would relish rewatching it, we'd like you to know that we will share this recording on YouTube in the next 48 hours. All right? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.